Curtis Wikel, thanks for being here.
It's my pleasure, Brandon.
Or is it mine? We're about to find out.
Yeah, you can find
Um,
out.
I'm guessing you don't do a lot of podcast interviews.
It was my first one. It's
Oh
first
man, I'm
breaking
psyched.
new ground. Yeah,
Great. Can you tell people a little bit about who you are?
sure. So my name's Kurt Wikel. I'm a geophysicist. I'm a dad. I co-own a brewery with some friends. Um, yeah, originally from North Dakota and then Montana. So I'm an American, but I live in Canada right now, which is an interesting place to be, especially because I live in Calgary, Alberta, which has its own like unique place in geopolitics at the moment as a dual citizen. So, yeah, that's it. I'm also a
Yeah.
dad. I think I said that before, but yeah, married
Yes.
with a kid.
Yep. And you and I have known each other for 20 to 23 years now,
Yeah,
probably.
and the funny part is, I think you live like maybe 2 miles from where we met. So
You're
like
right.
you were like you at University of Montana, right?
Yeah, like a mile and a half. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Wow.
So pretty close.
Does that does that make me a failure or a
No, not at
success?
all. I'm jealous, actually. I mean, like, if I could have, I never would have left Missoula because Missoula is amazing. But like, yeah, I was when I was in school. We met when we were both in school. I was you had just moved to Missoula, I think, from Iowa, and I
Hmm.
was in school for geology and physics at the building right next to the J school.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yep,
There's a little water under the bridge since then.
just a little bit. I think we're
Um,
actually healthier now than we were back then. That was the ironic part. I think we're in a better, probably in a better,
Absolutely.
healthier place.
Absolutely. I have not
Yeah.
smoked a cigarette in almost 20 years now, I think. So,
Yeah,
and that was one of our primary activities
it is
together.
actually.
Yeah.
Fondly remember that. I still have some of the coffee mugs you gave me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, denial is not a river in Egypt. My daughter used it last night. Yeah,
Wow. That's fantastic.
yeah,
So as you know, this podcast is called My Favorite Things. So you have this list of your favorite creative works throughout your life, and we're
yeah.
just gonna go through them. The first one on your list is The Simpsons,
Oh
which
yeah.
is a show. Can you talk about when, what, how old you are when you first encounter The Simpsons?
Oh man. Okay, yeah. So I'm when I say The Simpsons, I don't mean I have to plead the card of like somebody who was young when The Simpsons came out, and I only want to reference like seasons 2 through 8, like the
Oh,
golden
okay.
years Simpsons, right? So like not
Okay.
I haven't watched The Simpsons. I haven't watched new episodes of The Simpsons since oh man, probably like 2005. It kind of
Okay.
died for me like in the late 90s, but when I was young, when I was a kid growing up in North Dakota, like The Simpsons was everything. It was so new, it was so esoterically funny back when like Conan O'Brien was writing for it. It shaped a lot of sort of, and I didn't know it at the time, but when you look back on it and you watch it when you're older, like, sort of the things that you find funny or the jokes that you make or the things that you associate with your childhood. For TV shows, for me, it was the only and the first show I used to willfully cut things out of my day to make sure I watched it. So like I started watching it, I think when it first came out, I think I didn't get into it until the third season, so that would have been like 1992. And I
Hmm.
watched it religiously until like when I was in high school. Um, you know, God, like I still to this day, I'm terrible with names. I know people's faces. I could have met you 5 times. I won't remember your name, but I can distinctly remember full episode quotes. I can recite almost every single episode from The Simpsons. Like there's a chunk of my brain. You know, the thing where if you learn a new thing, something leaves because you only have a certain capacity. Like The Simpsons is burned into my cortex in a way that I can't really fully describe. And no other show's ever done it like that. I think it's because of the age I was. And it was a little bit older for me at the time. And so the humor, some of it was a little bit above my head, but you could kind of grow into it. Um, and so, like, yeah, and then I got to, and then you get older, and then and if you choose to have kids, if you have kids, you get to like share it with them. And I remember watching episodes of my daughter at the age that I was at the time, and thinking to myself, like, my God, I can't believe anybody let me watch this at that age. And it like But I let her do it because I was just like, oh, it was okay. And then she managed to get through it without like having any bad habits that came out of it that weren't any worse than anything else that she'd seen. But it was, I think, the sense of humor, the way that you looked at the world, the sort of, I guess it would be like, there was an optimism to every episode, even though it would deal with dark subjects and stuff. There was like an optimism that came with every episode that was really kind of touching. And I still have it. I mean, I've got it on my computer right now. There was an episode where they're going over like where Homer gets to quit his job finally because they pay off their mortgage, so he goes to work in his dream job at the bowling alley. And like Marge gets pregnant with Maggie, and he has to like go back to working at the nuclear power plant, which is like soul crushing for him. And there's a plaque on the wall that says, "Don't forget, you're here forever." And at the end of the episode, they're asking where all the pictures of Maggie are, and he says, "Well, I keep them where I need them the most." And it's at the end, it's got this thing where it's like he's covered up the sign with pictures of Maggie that says like "Do it for her." And so, as the father of a daughter who works in an office every day, which I can agree can be soul crushing. Yeah, like I have it on my desk. I still think about it. So it was a big part. It was a big part of who I was when I was a kid, and it still is. I don't know why or how, but that's incredible. So, yeah.
I remember Bart in the first few seasons, like when it was very brand new. I was a young kid too, and I remember Bart being sort of this like cool role model for like 8-9-year-olds, like,
Yeah.
is that your memory of it as well? Like that was the character you would latch on to, and you would have the Bart Simpson shirt when you were that age.
Yeah,
Or was
that's a
it,
good
did you
question.
have a different journey?
No, I always, I think I was like Bart, but I always kind of found him annoying. My favorite character was Homer. As an 8 to 10 year old, I don't know why, but like I just, as a man like who had a family and a house at his age when I was younger, I was like, man, that's something to aspire to, single family, like single income family, gets to like spend time with his kids. I wouldn't say I was a normal child, but like I just thought he was hilarious, like comedy. I was never as big a Bart fan. Yeah, I
Yeah.
was way more of a Homer fan. Still am. And he was actually I used him as my image for like my phone forever. So when I call people, it'd be Homer. Don't ask me
Yeah.
why. It just seemed to click. Yeah.
I feel like you and my brother could sit around for like 6 hours and just trade quotes, because I feel like he's very much the same. A lot of his sense of humor is Simpsons
Yeah.
quotes. Do
Yeah.
you do you find occasion in your regular life to bond with people over the Simpsons or Simpsons quotes now as an adult?
Absolutely. And I don't know if I seek people out who have the same interests with me or if you just gravitate towards the people who had the same formative things that you did. But like every single one of my friends had the same obsession with it when they were kids. So maybe we turned into similar people because of the way that we ingested that media or something, like, or have gravitated to them because like we have that thing. But like, I mean, now that we get together, I don't know if it's normal if other people do this, but like, yeah, everybody's got their show. I think like kids that are slightly older than us, it was South Park, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then like or Chappelle Show or like whatever media at the time was insanely popular because like what came after that was like, and then there was some more of the other, at least in the cartoon space. I think there are other people that had that show, but for us, it was always The Simpsons. So absolutely. Yeah. Like I get into these loops and I pity anybody else that's with us when we do it because it's just myopic and nobody else really gets it unless you're into it. I'd imagine how Grateful Dead fans or like spouses of Grateful Dead fans feel when they start talking about it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or,
Can be
or
all
any
consuming.
yeah, any passion. I feel like I had a friend who was not a rock climber who wanted to make a
I was going to
film.
say climbers. You beat me to it.
Yes, he wanted to make a film making fun of rock climbers who like
Yeah.
they get together, and once they figure out they're both rock climbers, that's all they talk about for like an hour. And I think it's like that with a lot of different. I'm sure it's like that with
Cyclists.
model train enthusiasts and like
Yeah.
whatever. So
But in one sense, at least, climbing's a healthy occupation to be obsessed with. Or cycling, The Simpsons I guess it'd be healthy mentally, but, there's no sport associated with it. There's a passion that comes with certain things in that I think I've found it bound together and I've found it through social media. Like, and there's this whole cadre of people that are like, The Simpsons seasons 2 through 8 were the holy grail of television. And they're all my age. I guarantee you they're all between the age of like late 30s to early 50s. So it existed in a time and a space, right? So you can find them. There's Instagram accounts, there's TikTok, I'm sure, YouTube, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
I think if you're going to end up in a conversation with somebody at a party and it's about The Simpsons, that's way more fun to be around than two people talking about politics, no matter
Yo,
what, you know, two people who agree on
yeah.
politics, right now, like
Yeah.
even well, no matter what side they're on, I feel like that's just going down a dark place no matter what. And The Simpsons, at least, it's just fun.
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, you could do both because The Simpsons skewered
Yeah,
both parties. When
you're
they
right.
had
You're
they
right.
had an episode where they had like Republicans were like it was something like Republicans were just plain evil and Democrats we just can't govern. They do both. Like they always. So you could meld the two together if you wanted to, and they never shied away from it, even back in the day, which was really cool. And they never. Well, I guess they maybe kind of took a side sometimes, but it was hilarious.
Um, how would you feel if like someone was like, Kurt, now you've turned into Homer Simpson. You're a dad. Like, what would you be like? Oh, that's awesome. Or would you be kind of going, oh, I don't know if that was what I intended.
I think it would depend on the context. If it was into
Okay.
like my personal health, I would be a little bit worried. Like it's just like he had a triple bypass in his 30s. I'd be like,
Right, right.
if you turned into Homer Simpson with your drinking and eating habits, I'd be like, oh, I should probably go like, I should probably reflect on and try to adjust my personal habits. But it was just like, hey, you're like a caring father who like, even though, you're not perfect at everything, at least you try it. It just depends on the context, right?
Yeah.
Which I guess if somebody said you're just like Barney Gumble, that would be a clearer, you know?
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
clearly got a problem, right? Yeah.
I feel like as a middle aged dad, I feel like I have a lot of Chevy Chase in the vacation movies moments where you're like, I can't believe I'm doing this is the dumbest thing. I look so stupid right now and I'm failing. And it's comical how bad this is going, but
Oh yeah, yeah,
this is where I put myself.
yeah.
Maybe we all have a
Do
little
you
Homer
get to do
Simpson
one of
too.
these though? Does somebody get to interview you about your five favorite things, or do you at least do one of yourself at the
I
end of
feel
it?
like I feel like if I make it to 100, maybe I'll do that. Yeah. Yeah, maybe I'll check back with you. You can interview me at 100.
I
This
would
is
be terrible
episode,
at it. I
this
would
is
be
like 10 or
terrible at it.
11. I don't think so. You and I have been talking for years.
I know.
Anyway,
Yeah, I just have a tendency to talk too much. So, yeah.
oh, it's yeah. That's a lot of podcasts are like that where the host is literally just wanting to talk and
Yeah.
ask guests to come on so they can hear themselves talk. That said, um, the next one on your list is Daft Punk Homework. And we were saying before I turned the recording, before I hit record, I was saying that I still remember you telling me many years ago that seeing Daft Punk at Red Rocks was the concert event of your lifetime.
Yeah.
And that's always stuck with me. What How'd you find Daft Punk when you were a teenager? Do you remember? Did you like see it on MTV, like, or
Oh
did somebody give
God.
you a record, or like what?
Yeah.
Where do you remember this?
Shout out to my sister because like my sister was 4 years older than me, right? So we were living in Havre, Montana, which shout out Havre, Montana. It's a great place, but let's be honest, like it's 5 hours from anything resembling a larger city. It's on something called the High Line. It's about an hour from the Canadian border in the middle of the High Plains. If you've ever been there, you can drive through it. It's like 6 blocks. It's a small town. A lot of great people, but it's a small town. And we had it. This is back in the day, like CDs, tapes, and CDs in the CD store, and they were great. They would order whatever you wanted, but you could find some stuff on MTV. But like finding new music was a struggle. Like I remember watching Full Metal Jacket, hearing back "Paint It Black" by the Rolling Stones, and then waiting until the end of the movie when the credits rolled because I had no idea who sang it, and I loved it. And I didn't even know it was the Rolling Stones. I found it, and then I had to go to the CD store to get a like you can't just go to Spotify and like find it, or you can't use Shazam or anything. It didn't exist. So my sister was older than me, and she was way more like in tune with just alternative stuff. I remember she brought me three CDs when she came to visit me. One of them was Daft Punk's Homework. The Frogs, It's Only Right and Natural, which you've never listened to that album, you absolutely should. It was on one of Kurt Cobain's like all-time great album lists. It should only be listened to not with children, but like. And then she also brought me Tools Anima, but Daft Punk Homework. I listened to it, and I'd seen the music video for Around the World like about the same time. And I had no experience with electronic music. I didn't know anything about the rave scene. Like, that was all occurring in like bigger cities. And I listened to it obsessively for like a year. And in a town like in Havre, like, somebody rolling around listening to Daft Punk was, you know, out of the ordinary to say the least. But it like opened up a whole, I'd say like musical genre that I didn't know I actually really liked. And so I was able to go and order a bunch of their other albums and a whole bunch of their other things. And there's two stories that come out of it. So when back in the day, you had a CD case in your car. Like that CD case, when you first met somebody, when you got into somebody's car, or if you met, like a significant other or somebody that you were interested in, the first thing that they would do is they'd go through your CDs. It was just sort of like a window. It's not like they can go through your bookshelf at home. I didn't have a bookshelf, really. That was anything other than Mad Magazine, but like they'd go through your CDs in your car.
It's like a
And I
background
remember
check, really.
right? Yeah, yeah. It's like a background check. And, you could go through it and just be like, oh, it's all AC/DC and Limp Bizkit, which in Havre at the time was about like, 90% of the people. Um, and, but, when I first met my girlfriend in high school at the time, who's now my wife, like it was like the kung fu moment and, um, and, what's the Mike Judge movie? Office Space?
Hmm.
Like where she like he meets Jennifer Aniston, who's like I love kung fu, and that was like their bonding moment. Like she was like probably the only other person in Havre, Montana that had Daft Punk's Homework CD, and that was like the thing where it was like, oh, I think I like you. And there was that, and then it opened up this whole other world of music that I didn't know existed. This like whole other thing. It's like, oh wow, people get together in warehouses and do drugs and dance to this all night. That sounds amazing. It's just like it was like it was a big impetus for me wanting to get out of Havre, like to get out and go do something else and go see different parts of the world and maybe not work and live on a ranch or a farm. And, I don't now, obviously. So it was a big influence. And then when I was in grad school in Golden and I was living with my wife, Daft Punk it was on a live tour in 2007. And they were going to Red Rocks. And I'd been to Red Rocks one time before. And this was about the time, like electronic music, going to go see electronic shows used to kind of suck, right? It would just be a guy with turntables and a laptop. It'd be cool if you were like dancing and stuff, or if you were, taking either recreational substances or drinking, right? You could have a good time, but it was nothing really to write home about. And I didn't really know what to expect when we went to go see Daft Punk, except, they dressed up as robots. And so I remember I had a buddy of mine in town from Connecticut, would not go to the Daft Punk concert. He's like, I'm not an electronic music fan. I'm like, listen, dude, like, let me buy you, I'll buy you the ticket. And this is the part that blows my mind. Daft Punk Red Rocks. If you did that today, good fucking luck ever getting tickets. Like, it would just not happen. I bought tickets to that concert the day before. It wasn't even sold out for my buddy Matt. Yeah, no, I couldn't believe it. And like, we got there, got to the concert. They had an opening acts were crazy. So there was four of us. And then, at Red Rocks at the time, I don't think you could bring alcohol into Red Rocks at the time. So I'd managed to sneak in like a bunch of liquor in Ziploc bags, which is a different story. But anyway, long story short is we'd had a couple drinks. We were having a really great time and I didn't know what to expect. I'd seen some photos about the setup that they were using and they basically come out with this giant triangle and it was this massive like production light show / visual experience that I've read in the past is now like the standard for most electronic music shows. They were the first ones who would ever turn like DJing into something a lot bigger, right? And if you look at a lot of people that followed after them, it came out of that. And so I remember at the time being like, oh, we should probably go because we don't know when we're going to be able to see him again. And the thing is that was really their last tour, right? They did a couple of sets of Coachella when Random Access Memories came out, and then they broke up. They got older, they broke up. And they were in their like 30s or 40s at the time. And so a couple things, like, I think that was like, I remember seeing it at the time and being like, oh man, that was amazing. And I don't know if anybody else has ever had it where you're in the middle of a moment and you're like, man, this might be the happiest I've ever been. Like I had that at that concert. It was really great. and it converted like one of my friends who was not an electronic music fan into a huge electronic music fan. It was like before like who's now my wife and I got married, it was like a really formative part of our relationship. And then looking back on it, it's like I didn't realize at the time that that was my last chance to ever see me. And so looking back on it in post, it was like whenever something comes up now where I'm like waffling about, well, maybe I should, I don't know. Buying tickets to go see Radiohead is kind of a pain in the ass. I don't know if I want to do it. I'm very much like now, like, I don't know, this might be the last time. Either, I might get sick or something might happen to me or they might break up. So it's caused that experience alone caused me to like reassess how I view doing things, whether it's with friends, like going on a ski trip or like going, to meet a friend somewhere else, to send somebody a text. It, and it was funny because it was like I knew it at the time, and then like in the longer arc of time, I was like, man, holy crap! Like, what we're lucky to go see that. And so it took a while afterwards, but I was like, it changed a lot of like how I choose to experience life instead of just like deferring things and not doing them. I very much will go and do them now. I'm like almost to the point where it's maybe a little bit harder on my bank account than it should be. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. But
Yeah.
that's like it's. I was thinking about it when you asked me the question about creative works. It was like, man, Daft Punk's Homework like set off this string of events, like where I met my wife, like one of the best concerts I've ever seen, and like the string through to like how I actually say yes or no to things is really weird, but it kind of goes back to that.
It's super huge too, and it's like, I think a lot of it, like music you experience in your teens, is like very solitary sometimes. It's just like this is my
Absolutely, yeah.
album that I listen to in my bedroom or whatever, and like it's all the emotions I'm going through in private, growing up and as a teenager. But then to also have it be this link between you and Brittany,
Yeah.
and then you get married, and then and then like to have it deliver as a live show
Oh,
when you're like
yeah.
that's wow, okay, yeah,
Because
there's
yeah,
no
I mean,
other,
like it could go the other way. Like I saw the Beastie
yeah.
Boys at Red Rocks, and it was awful. Like it was bad. I mean, like I love the Beastie Boys, but they were just off, and it sucked, and whatever, like. And it could go the other way, but that one was like single-handedly incredible. It was also just a collision of like all the culture that I had sort of seen and read about, like writ large. Like you had all
Mhm.
these like I remember watching this woman and like the highest heels I'd ever seen in my life. They were solid, like they must have been 8 inches tall. And to see a person like that with glow sticks wrapped around them trying to navigate the stairs at Red Rocks was like incredible, and then like, and all the things just like late at night. And yeah, it was great. It was a super fun
Yeah.
time. And if they ever came out again, if they ever went around and did a reunion tour or something like that, I would probably fly halfway around the world to go see it.
Yeah.
And then maybe be
Yeah.
let down by it, but that's not the point.
I know, right? Yeah. That's a risk for sure there.
Yeah.
Uh Next on your list, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance by Robert W. Pirsig, the book.
Hmm.
Um I also read that in my 20s, but
We talked about it.
before I met you. Did I
We
recommend
talked
this
about
book
it
to
though,
you?
because I was
Okay.
taking it in a philosophy class. I remember we chatted about it over
Okay.
cigarettes at Dixie's one time.
Oh yeah. That place isn't there anymore.
I know. You can
What
still smell it.
so this is a college class.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Philosophy
was.
was an elective, maybe, in your
Yep.
geology degree.
Yeah. So I chose a path that was like, all science, right? And we had to take electives because at a liberal arts college, and in most colleges you have to, and I'm a big supporter of that because it exposes you to different stuff, right? Different ways of thinking. I took a philosophy class. I can't remember the name of the teacher. He was excellent. And Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance was one of those books that when you read it yourself, I think it hits pretty hard. But when you have someone to help kind of guide you through some of those things and the broader topics, that like
Hmm.
it makes it a lot more impactful. I think you can overanalyze books a lot. Like, it's possible. I've been in English lit classes where, I think Hemingway made a joke about like, there's nothing more to the old man and the sea than, we're reading too much into it. I think I can't remember the quote, but with Pirsig's books, it was dense. There's a lot of things you can read about it. And I remember it was sort of this, if you've never read it, it's about this guy taking a motorcycle trip across the country with his kid, and it sort of deviates from the actual practicalities of traveling and where they're going, and then into some of these meditations on philosophy, the meaning of life, and all these other things. And it's like a deep, really incredible. I think it's like a really touching book, and the only book I ever regret giving away. And I got this from you. You're like, it was really great books. I give them away because they're meant to be shared. And the version that I had that had all my notes and my highlights in it, I gave it away, and I never got it back. And that was a huge fuck up. Yeah, I know. I've got it. I bought another copy of it. I tried to recreate it, but like, I lost it all. But it was really formative in that, like, it was one of the first philosophy books that I ever felt compelled to talk to somebody about. I think it was with you a couple times, and a few other people. And then also the guy, has struggled, I think, relatively mightily with like mental illness and how that impacted his career, and like how he'd sort of woven it into this journey with his kid. And yeah, and it was one of those books that like how, yeah, I mean, somebody had the idea to like, to write it, share it with people, and become such a huge thing. And it's just like, I don't think it's, in certain circles, it's like a literary masterpiece. It's huge. And I don't think it's as appreciated, maybe as widespread as it used to be, which is a shame. But yeah, when you sent this to me, it was just like, it was the first philosophy book. It was like the first college class I ever took where I was like, I get why liberal arts is a thing, why people should. Because I'm not a philosopher. Like, I deal in numbers and math and physics and, rocks. But there's an art to science, and there's like different things that come about from sort of changing the way that you think and how you come at problems, and having like different exposures to different either points of view or critical thought, whether it's like, literary, musical, political, is healthy, because being myopically focused on any one thing is incredibly unhealthy. But I still take umbrage with the University of Montana for making me take a dance class my last year of school because I didn't have enough art credits. And I got a B. I got a B, Brendan.
Oh.
And I got asked about it at job interviews for like highly technical science positions, like as a joke. They're like, I see you got a B in interpretive dance. Would you like to tell me about that? And my answer is always, no, I would not.
You're just like, that's not reflective of my skill as a dancer now.
Yeah, it was with skill as a dancer or a person now.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance famously was rejected like over 100 times by publishers, and then became this like mega best-selling book. I think actually partly due to the fact that the discussion of quality in the book is like, when I was carrying it around campus, I was like studying to get a marketing degree. So I was in the business school all the time, and people would be like, oh yeah, I want to say it was like operations management class. They read that or something like that. So that it was known in the business school, but I was just reading it for fun. And then years later, I was riding with a friend of mine who's a cyclist and a writer, and we're just pedaling along. Maynard, he was in his 60s then, and he's like a bit of a curmudgeon, but I like looked over at him and was like, yeah, it's like in the book Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. And he just looks at me and goes, unreadable. And I just started laughing my ass off. But if you look at like Goodreads, there's a lot of people who hate that book. And
Oh
like,
yeah, no, it's highly divisive.
Yeah.
It's like I view it sort of akin, and not in size, but sort of themed to Infinite Jest.
Oh,
Like,
okay, yeah.
if you've ever
Yeah.
read David Foster Wallace's, I'd say, seminal classic, Infinite Jest, you know how many pages it took me to get into that book? It took me about the length of Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. And then the last 600 pages were great, but the first 400 were a real bastard. Like,
Yeah.
and I made a pact with myself because I was reading it when Britt was pregnant with her daughter. And I was like, I'm going to finish this before I was born. And it literally took me 9 months. But it was one of those ones where you have to stick with it. But I could see why people call it unreadable. And I
Yeah.
think, I don't know, like with any creative thing, to go back to like what you were asking me about, like, Rick Rubin has a bunch of stuff. It's like, you don't make it for somebody else, you make it for yourself. And, I don't know if Pirsig like wrote it for himself. I think it was like a meditation for himself, right? And obviously it had things for other people, but I think that's the beautiful part about it. It was like this guy's motorcycle trip and his view on philosophy, and how so many other people have resonated with. That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next one on your list. Also a literary classic, A Coconut Named Bob.
Oh, I love it. I know. I put that one in there just for you because like it's a book. It's a book recommendation.
We don't have that one. Yeah.
I would highly suggest it. Like we got it. Somebody, it's very tropically themed. It's called The Coconut Named Bob, and it was just like it was in my 30s. Like we had our daughter, and like so we were reading to her constantly, right? And you just sort of you burn through kids' books, like you can get through them. And God, like we were got it, and I was reading through it, and it was just like so simple, but like every time I read it, I'd always like kind of like choke up. It was just so heartbreaking. I'm like, my God, why is that? I don't know why it was. It was this literally a story about this little lonely kid who lives in a tropical place, and you don't know where it is. It's implied it could be like Hawaii or something, and family's really poor, and he's super lonely. So his dad's a fisherman, and he befriends this coconut that they find floating in the ocean, just like a coconut. He puts a face on it, and one night, there's a big storm, and the coconut falls off the boat, floats away. The kid's devastated, right? And then it takes the perspective of the actual coconut floating to a beach and turning into a coconut tree. And like the whole time it's turning into a tree, like decades pass, and this coconut's just sitting there missing the kid, you know? And then it like at the end of the book is like this old man, like a boat shows up at the island, and this old man and his grandkids show up. And it's Bob. And the tree realizes it's Bob. I don't want to ruin this a spoiler for you, just in case you get the book. But and it's just like, kid walks up to the tree, puts his hand on it. It's now an old man, and he just says, "Hi, Bob. How have you been?" You know, and like it's this story about sort of like I don't know connections and longing, and like it's like kind of like the Giving Tree, but I don't know why, but I still think about it, and every time I read it, every single time it like gets me. I don't know why.
Still,
And
yeah,
it's just like
still.
it was to me like it's like such a simple piece of creativity that like can tell you can do a lot with a little bit, I guess.
Do
And
you,
it stuck with me more than my daughter. My daughter doesn't remember it, but it stuck with me, and it was a big part of like me being a dad, I guess. Yeah.
we have the exact same. I have the exact same relationship with a book that Jade is like totally indifferent to, but it's like I'm like this one's Dad's favorite. We're reading it tonight. You got four other books. This one's
Yeah,
Dad's. Um, yeah, that was the first thing I thought of was a Castaway and Tom Hanks and
exactly.
Wilson, the volleyball.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. And maybe it was like a play on that. I don't know. But it's
Yeah,
like it'd
but
be the same as if Tom Hanks, in Castaway went back to the island and ran into Wilson, and Wilson had missed him or something like that. If you were able to view the world through a volleyball.
yeah, but also I was like before you said the Giving Tree, I was like, yeah, it's like the Giving Tree, but like not as dark and hopeless.
Yeah, not as morbid where the tree
Jeez.
dismembers itself and the
Yeah.
kid's selfish. I think like, I viewed it as like so for things that I listen to music constantly. Like you watch movies all the time, but it's like I think when you suggested things to kind of broaden it down, you do it and you broke it up into decades. And my 30s were characterized by like, being a dad and all the things that come with that. And one of the cool things, and go back to like Zen in the Art of Motorcycle Man, it's like one of the cool things about having a kid that I didn't know, or I didn't take it for granted, was like, they force you to like view the world through their eyes. And it's like the Buddhist mentality of like viewing the world through the eyes of a child because it's innocent and, everything's beautiful and cool. And that's fantastic. Like that's one of the best things about it. And yeah, I guess like that was me being a kid with a coconut named Bob. It was just, I don't know, stuck with me.
Yeah.
It's a hard thing to do.
For sure. And you're sifting through a lot of not as quality kids books, and like I
Yeah,
find myself
yeah,
making I'm
yeah,
like, I don't know. I'm like, you want to read that one? I like the plot's
yeah,
super thin, buddy. It's like
yeah,
I think you're too old for that. Like
yeah,
there's no tension. Nobody learns
yeah.
anything about themselves. Come on, what are
That's
we
right.
doing?
That's right.
Um,
It's not
yeah,
emotionally gut wrenching right before bed. What are you doing?
yeah, yeah. So do you still have a copy of A Coconut Named Bob?
I do.
I,
Yeah, we
you
kept
do.
it.
That one's
It's
yours.
like, yeah, that one's mine. I like it. Care less. Yeah, that one's mine.
That's good.
Yeah.
Okay. Last one on the list is we're letting you get away with both of these. It's two different things, but we'll go ahead and let that slide. It's Dune, the book
Yeah.
and the movie.
Yeah.
Um, What order? What order did you experience the book and the movie?
So I read the book when I was in high school. I loved it.
Okay,
And then I made the mistake of watching the
David Lynch's.
the David Lynch version of Dune, where I was just like, it had spoiled me on like sort of these sci-fi epics. And like watching,
Oh,
because I read the book, and like that's amazing. And then I watched like David Lynch's, like, holy God, that was terrible. And there are people
wow.
that loved it. It was not for me. I was younger, right?
Hmm.
And there are people that it's become, I think, a classic in its own right to a degree. And I was a huge fan of the book. And so when the new movies came out, I was equally excited slash sort of horrified. But I was excited by I concentrated on music and books for the other stuff. And like, I love movies. They're like an escape in so many different ways. But like Denis Villeneuve, I think I'm saying that correctly, like one of my favorite directors, like Blade Runner 2049 was absolutely incredible because I was not really a Blade Runner fan. Blade Runner 2049, I was like, holy shit. Like there's so much more to the story. It's incredible, you know, and then when he was taking over Dune, I'm like, okay, that's awesome. And I didn't see it in the theaters. And I don't know why. I watched it on a plane. So I was
Oh,
flying for work. I watched it on a plane. I know. Watched it on a plane, and I was like, "That's incredible." I watched it twice, and then I bought it when I got to where I was going, and I watched it again on the way home. And my daughter was old enough at the time, and she watched it, and she became obsessed with it. So like when this was during COVID, I think, and then Dune 2 got delayed, right? And so when Dune 2 came out, it was like the first time that like I had ever shared that excitement with like, my kid, and it was awesome. And we got to go watch it together in the theater, which I had had some other parents go and watch it and tell us it was like a little dark, but probably okay for her age. And then she's going to experience it the other way, where she's going to see the movie and then she's reading the book, going to
she
read
is
the
reading the
book.
book.
She's going to, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and it's tough to get into, but like, it's like now you're going to see it in the opposite sense. Cause like before you have all this stuff, you make it up in your head, right?
Mhm.
And I had the same thing where I watched the Lord of the Rings movies and then read the books. I was never exposed to Tolkien when I was a kid, and it changes your perception of it. And that's an interesting, so it allowed me to have a conversation with my daughter, and to be honest with B, because like she'd never read the books, because it's set now, right? Paul Atreides will probably forever be Timothy Chalamet, at least, or some version of that in your head. Whereas when you do it before, it's something totally different, and then you get into the conversation about like how you know everybody had to make a choice about how you represent these things, and then how those stick with you after you see it. So I never really knew like that when I was younger. And so to have that, the two, it's like the Harry Potter books. You could read the Harry Potter books, you make it up in your head, and then you go watch the movie, or watch the movie and you read the books. Which do you prefer? I always prefer the former, where it's like you read the book first, and then you see somebody else's interpretation. It's like, well, that's not the way I would have went. Like, I didn't think Baron Harkonnen looked like Stellan Skarsgård in my head. And I don't know if that's just the way I look at it, or if that's the way other people look at it. But that was a huge learning for me, and something I was able to like pass on to my daughter. It's like, be careful about how you ingest media. Like, because if this is like let's look at video games versus movies. So there's a whole bunch of like Hollywood has started mining video games for movies now, right? Like Last of Us, Fallout, whatever. You want to play the game first, or do you want to have the movie tell you what the game is supposed to tell you and do it the other way around? And I don't know if that's I think it's more recent. I think in the past, like book adaptations that go to movies and stuff. But I was actually able to like have a conversation with my family about it, like get into like a deep philosophical conversation. There's no right way. But do you want to imagine something yourself, or have someone imagine it for you?
What's more fun to you?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right?
I know. Yeah. Do you remember some of the things Isla said about the movie after watching it?
I think a lot of it was around like just the feeling it created.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, like it was really well done. The way that they did the tech was really cool. And we talked about pace a lot. The pace of, if you've seen Dune 1, the pace of Dune 1 and the pace of Dune 2 are totally different. Pacing in movies is like a huge thing for me, because like you watch the movie Alien, and it's just like the tension and the slow build of it are part of the horror. And as society has advanced, like if you look at like Marvel movies or you look at any sort of newer media, the pace of it is just exhausting. Like you can roll through what used to be 6 movies in an hour or two, right? So like Dune 1 felt like that old throwback. And it was funny because Dune 1 was less popular because everybody's like, oh, it moves too slow. It's like, yeah, it moves slow because it was like building the story behind like what's happening. And then Dune 2 moved a lot quicker. And so I think a lot of it was sort of around just like some of the technology and the implication of some of the things. And then just the use of like, the broader implications of like, is it right or wrong to have one group of people rule over another? And, is in the end what Paul's doing actually correct or wrong, right? And the moral implications of it outside of just the aesthetic. And that's, I think, a better way. Actually, with kids, I think it's more effective. Like if you guide them in the right direction of like, hey, should one person be able to rule over all these people and then like, get them all killed in like a holy war? Set them free? Like those are pretty heady questions. It's just like, it's hard to like contextualize those esoterically as a word. But then when you watch the movie and at the end of it, like where they're just, flying off to go kill a bunch of people, it's like, so you think that's right? Is there a right answer? Like, and for like a 12-year-old to think about it or at least ask questions about it, there's no other way to do it. And so it was funny because like she thought about it. I think a lot of it was aesthetic, but she also asked a bunch of questions sort of around like, so why are they doing that? Like, and it's like, well, why are they doing that? Do you think that's right or wrong? And, there's an age where that becomes appropriate. And I think like she's like 11 at the time and maybe a little bit young. But in terms of sort of the theme of what I like gave you, it was sort of, I think a lot of it was sort of interconnected, and it's just like how you ingest media, how it influences your view of the world, and like what the kind of questions it makes you ask, except for Daft Punk. But
Well, I mean, I think the premise of this entire podcast is like, what are we except, other than like the things, a collection of the things we like, and
oh,
why
I
we
know
like them,
exactly.
you know what I mean?
Exactly.
So
I mean,
it's
you
so
think
fun.
about what defines you as a person, like you, like you're, your dad, you're a husband, you're an artist, you're a writer, you're creative, you're an ultra marathoner, like you do all these things. But on the heart of it, outside of like, the essence of who you are and like what you do, you're a collection of, I mean, we all, whether we realize it or not, we choose the people that we hang out with, our friends, based on their likes and dislikes. And a lot of that's media, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you can very quickly bracket people into the things that they like and dislike about whether or not you'll click with them. It's a filter.
Yeah.
Now, that's not always true, right? And that's like that you could say like, oh, well, you like this musician. It's like we're probably don't have a ton of common, which is maybe not true. But it gets done quite a bit. Or at least it used to when I was younger.
Yeah, or it's, you have to have more data points.
Exactly.
Oh, you like them, but you also like this movie that I like, so maybe we're cool.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. But I mean, you
yeah.
do, you click with people or you connect with people in certain ways with what you are, who you are, your background, stuff, whatever. But like media is a big part of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the things that you like and dislike.
Yeah. Has anything, we need to wrap this up, but has anything Isla has brought into your life been a surprise that you liked it?
Oh, God. Yeah. Oh man. Okay. I don't know, you haven't hit this yet, but like when somebody that's younger gets access to like Spotify or media and their taste goes in a different direction. Like my daughter's amazing in a lot of ways, but like I don't ever, it's a constant struggle because they want to share stuff with you, but there's music that she's put on that I'm just like, oh man, I never heard of this. This is amazing. I'll be totally honest. Like Charlie XCX, barely ever listened to her. Wasn't even on my radar. Olivia Rodrigo, same. Like, some of the YouTubers that she watches as a media form, I never got really big into YouTube. That's her media. Like, and you have to watch it like a hog. But like, a lot of the things that she sees and a lot of the way that she ingests stuff is totally different. So like I got really into like some of the YouTube creators that she watches, like Twitch streaming, like watching somebody play a video game. To go back to it, like she listened to Brad on repeat, and I was just like, oh my God, this is incredible. Like Von Dutch, great song. We sing along together to Olivia Rodrigo songs. I'm not afraid to admit it. I will draw the line at like, some of the, it's just like some of these like rapid fire TikTok-esque things are just too much for me. And then books,
Dad's got to
man.
go sit down.
Yeah, dad needs to like, take a break. But then like, I mean, for books and stuff too, like some of the, she's getting to the age now where like some of the books that she brings home, like she's really into graphic novels. Yeah, it's a really, that's the really cool part about it. And there are some things that she brings home, just like, I absolutely hate this, but that's okay because it's this what she wants. And like, that's the cool part about it is you get to see somebody, because we listen to music all the time and she takes some of that, she likes it, then she has her own spin on it, you
Hmm.
know? And you'll get that. But they'll broaden your horizons if you're open to it, right?
Yeah.
You have to be open to it. So going back to my earlier comments about going to go see Daft Punk and Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, just as long as you're open to new things.
Yeah.
I gotta I
Thanks.
gotta ask you that
Oh,
question though for you and Jay. Has Jay brought you anything?
I had not seen Frozen, and now he's seen it like 15 times. And yeah, he's like super obsessed. Hillary made him a little dress, and he's like running around with a sword and a cape and a dress. And, there's, of course, the societal implications of a little boy wearing a dress and like whatever. And you think about
Yeah.
that, but I'm like, the dress makes him feel powerful. He's not assigning this to any sort of like gender thing at all. He's like, this is what the most powerful character I know of wears, and this is so it's very interesting. But I didn't know it was still going to be a big thing like 15 years later, and here we are. We're
Oh,
gonna have to listen to Let It Go on repeat for I don't know how long. So, but yeah, no, I've mostly introduced him to music to see if he likes it, and that's been really really fun.
oh yeah. And the
As
cool
everybody
part about
knows.
it is that it'll come back to you in ways you can't possibly understand when you listen to music when they're that young.
Yeah, hope so.
Because
So
like Isla came to me at one point. And she had she's just like it was just to wrap. To go back to what we're talking about to wrap it up. She's like a huge Daft Punk fan now. And we just played in the background. We never play. I mean, we played it for her explicitly a couple times when she asked us about it. But now she like absolutely loves it. And
did
that
you
that was not forced. So
have you told her like you essentially exist as a human being because of Daft Punk? Like
no, I
this
haven't. I
particular
could though.
album, actually? Yeah.
I was like, I don't know if you want to start pulling that thread about
Yeah.
the trying to imbue life with meaning and like a chaotic universe where everything's a coincidence. I don't want to start that conversation yet.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Um, awesome, dude. Thanks so much. This is super fun.